Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Healthy in a Wild World. I am sitting today with Dr. Catherine Darley, and she is a natural sleep medicine expert. I was excited to bring this guest to you today, mostly because we talked a little bit about sleep last quarter in 2023, and we touched on it. We even had a whole fall retreat about it. But I noticed that there were a lot of questions afterwards. So when I met Dr. Darley, it was amazing because this is a topic I really wanted to bring back to you and bring back to you in a way that wasn't me talking to you. So I'm going to turn the stage over now so that Catherine can introduce herself. Thank you for being here. I am so excited for you to be here. So would you please introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here and talk about this subject. Everybody sleeps. Hands down, everybody needs to sleep. So this is a topic that is relevant for most people because it's really common to have some type of sleep challenge periodically in your life, hopefully not chronically, but there are those people who struggle kind of perpetually with their sleep, and I'd love to give sleep skills. My background, I'm a naturopathic physician licensed in Washington State, and I've focused my entire career on sleep medicine because it is just such an important foundation of life and health that we don't learn about, in high school health classes, or doctors often won't ask about our sleep. It's something that physicians don't get much training on in medical school. So I love to share some skills with folks.
I love it. I love it. It's definitely something I hear quite often when I'm working with clients is one of their number one symptoms. And I talk a lot about gut health on social media, but one of the number one symptoms is not being able to sleep. And it's not just not even sleeping well, it's variations from not being able to fall asleep to not staying asleep, waking up groggy, the usual issues or what are very common nowadays.
Yeah.
Um, so some of the things that you and I had talked about was circadian rhythm and how that impacts everybody. And I know you had a couple of topics that you like to really highlight. So could you give us some essential sleep skills?
Sure, sure. So the circadian rhythm is that 24-hour pattern in our function, our physiological function. And of course, our sleep and wake is on a 24-hour pattern. We all know that. But what people might not realize is that every cell in your body has clock genes that make that cell do more or less of its function at different times of day. And then our organs are populations of cells that are all working together for a specific purpose. And so our organ systems will have a 24-hour rhythm. An example would be our digestive system. Our digestive system is really set to be active and process food easily during the day, but not so much at night. And lots of people can relate. If you think back to a time that you stayed up late for a project, you're trying to snack in the middle of the night, or maybe you got up early for a travel day and you're trying to eat breakfast before you leave the house, and it's hours before you typically eat breakfast, and the food just sits there. And it's because we've got this circadian pattern in our digestive function. And so that is really important to have what I think of as a robust circadian system where you're widely awake and functioning well during the day, and then you're deeply asleep and in that rest mode at the organ level during the night. And and that fortunately is something that we can strengthen with our habits. And I think that's really kind of a cutting edge idea for the public to start to use. We've all heard about avoiding blue light at night, but that's just kind of one of 10 different strategies a person can use to strengthen their circadian system. And Because our sleep is part of that circadian pattern. Having a stronger circadian rhythm translates into better sleep.
I love that. It's definitely something I found. It's part of the reason I still live down south. I grew up in DC, the other Washington.
Okay.
And when I hit 30, I got snowed in by a blizzard and I was done with winter. And I'd always suffered from seasonal depression disorder. Um, the second it gets cloudy and gray, I'm not sleeping. I'm sluggish throughout the day. Everything is
Yeah.
thrown off. And down here we're in Texas now, and I think it's 320 days, 330 days of sun.
Oh my goodness.
It's a lot. It's a lot. My body loves it. Let me just put it that way. But I still feel those gray days.
Uh-huh.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes
Right.
sense.
That's very common. And people who have seasonal affective disorder will also have sleep problems along with it typically.
Yeah, that
Either they're sleeping extra or they're not able to sleep at night. They've got some type of insomnia presentation.
yeah, that was my biggest issue. Fluctuated between the two. I would have nights in a row where I couldn't sleep at all, and then
Uh-huh.
one or two nights where I slept so much I was struggling to wake up.
Yes, that's really common with seasonal affective disorder. And getting that light is super important for SAD. It is also important for pretty much all of us. And I want to point out there are some actual measurable recommendations for light that people may not know of. And so the recommendation is during the day, you get 250 lux of bright outside bright light. Um, and to give some reference, one lux is equal to one candle flame from 3 feet away. So one lux is not very much. Outside, we typically will get 10,000 to 30,000 lux of light. Indoors is often like 160, not very much light. It's not, indoor lighting is really not enough for our circadian health and for our circadian system. So, one cool thing that folks can do if you're at all into tech or like measuring things and like geeking out on the science, and is that on your smartphone, you can download what's called a lux meter. There's free ones that are pretty good, and you hold it up to your eye because it's really the eye that makes the difference that you want to get the light in. So you hold it up to your eye and just kind of sit at the places that you work, like your desk, looking at the computer, and measure how much light am I getting. I did that recently. I've got a computer screen in front of me, one to the right, overhead lights, big double glass sliding doors over on this other side. It was only 160 lux. And recently I was talking with a professional lighting designer. It's spent his whole career in lighting design. And he said, most people, if they walk into a room that is 250 lux, they're going to say, whoa, this is too bright. Turn down the lights. But outdoors is so much brighter. So the recommendation is that in the first couple hours of your day, sooner is better, although it's not always possible, to go outside for 20 minutes at least without sunglasses and get that bright sunlight to really cue your body that it is time to wake up, be in that wakeful physiology, active, productive, thinking sharp, digesting well, all of those circadian features of wakefulness, and every couple hours to get bursts of light. So, we have the recommendation that we not sit at our desk or sit inside all day because sitting it's not good, right? So this is another reason to take those breaks every couple hours, move your body, go outside, get that bright light. You have the benefits of movement, you've got the benefits of the bright light, and that alone will translate into better sleep, having better light exposure during the day.
That's amazing. I'm always telling people, especially those suffering from allergies, the very first thing you do in the morning is walk outside and put your feet on the ground in the dew.
Yeah,
It's,
right.
one of those traditional therapies that if you ground yourself first thing, especially if you're in that dew first thing in the morning, and not the sprinkler water,
No, no.
but the natural dew that's produced by Mother Nature, then it triggers your body to actually fight off more of the seasonal allergies and reignites that energy um, transformation between you and Mother Nature. So, yeah,
Yeah, nature cure is powerful, definitely. And when you're outside, if you are getting that light, you're getting the movement, you're getting the nature experience, to try to mentally connect with your surroundings instead of connecting with your to-do list or that annoying, irritating conversation you had, or whatever's on your mind, but to really fully be present and look at the plants and the sky and listen for bird sounds, or other creatures in your neighborhood, the kids playing, laughing, a joyful sound. I'm a very big proponent of what we call nature cure, which is connecting to nature, and that's why I purposefully have in my background here a plant and a picture that has the sky and birds and whatnot, because even just those small little connections to nature where I'm not necessarily thinking about it. I don't think people who are viewing the video are thinking about it, but I'm giving everyone who watches the podcast a little burst of nature cure. And even plants and pictures of nature actually improve our health measurably, and there's research to back that up.
I had not heard that yet. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm a big proponent of taking pictures on vacations. I come back with thousands upon thousands of pictures. And a lot of times what happens is we'll print them out and I'll put them on my walls.
Yes.
And it makes me happy to walk around the house and see all this nature. But
Right.
I never connected the two.
Oh
So that
yeah, it's profound. I mean, there's studies of like nature murals, and even a ceiling painted with a blue sky and clouds and birds in a hospital setting improves healing more than having just a white ceiling over a hospital bed.
okay. Oh, that's
Yeah,
good. Oh, I
things
love
to know.
I love how they're coming out with so many more scientific studies that are related to our connection to nature and how
Yes.
we can help each other really grow and heal and live healthy, um, us and the plants.
Right. Right.
So I actually had a question for you. I was very excited this morning after waking up and realizing that you and I were recording today. Mostly because, as many of the viewers know, I have 3.5-year-old toddler twins. Well, they're a little older than 3.5. Their birthday's in June. Um, and they're starting to have one of them's having issues with waking up in the middle of the night, crying or screaming, but he's not waking up. It's those night terrors, which obviously wakes up the rest of the house. And mamas take a little longer to fall asleep. Um, so then I wake up looking like I hadn't slept all night and feeling a little like that as well. Do you have any suggestions for that or explanation as to why it impacts it?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you bring this up, because there's some confusion for people between what's the difference between a nightmare and a sleep terror. And so let me go through that. A nightmare is coming out of REM sleep. And REM sleep is typically this more in the second half of the night of a person's sleep period. So it will usually be more towards the morning if they're having a nightmare. A nightmare, they'll have a really complex story-like dream. They'll wake up on their own and they'll be able to tell you the story of, I dreamt about this, and it'll be complicated and it'll be detailed. A sleep terror, the happens in deep sleep or non-REM sleep, so it'll be more likely to happen in the first half of the night,
Mm.
and the child doesn't wake up. It's more of a brain kind of disorganization that causes screaming, crying, maybe a vocalization, maybe some thrashing about in bed, and yet the child will be asleep. They will go back, they'll settle down and they'll go back and they'll continue sleeping on their own. No parent intervention is needed or even recommended, because if you wake the child up, they'll be distressed about, why are you waking me up? I was sleeping. What's wrong? Mommy doesn't usually wake me up in the middle of the night. What's wrong? Right? You do, of course, want to make sure that safety parameters are in place for the sleep terrors, that they don't have art hanging on the walls or anything hanging on the walls that can fall down, a bulletin board or awards from school. Nothing should be hanging on the walls around the child's bed. You also want to make sure that they don't have any furniture they could whack their wrist or their arm on. So they should not have a bedside table. I actually sleep terrors and nightmares are more common in those younger children, preschool-ish age, although they can persist in adulthood. And I actually had an adult patient. She was, I think, in her late 50s, woman who had consistently throughout her life had sleep terrors, and she had broken her wrist on a bedside table. She'd given her husband a black eye just in the thrashing about. So you just want to make sure those safety parameters are in place. Kids, when they're going through a developmental stage, like they're starting school or they're starting a new school, or they suddenly have learned to read, or that something, they're meeting a developmental milestone, those kinds of stressors can actually make the sleep terrors more likely to happen. Or if there's a change in routine or a move, or, for whatever reason, the child's been sleep deprived. Like, sleep terrors can happen sometimes more around holidays or travel just because of the sleep deprivation. So those are some of the things just to keep an eye on and, you know, adjust if needed.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I feel for you because so many moms do have nighttime caregiving duties, and it affects their own sleep and well-being and ability to function. We all have had those days where we didn't get the sleep we need, and we know that we're dragging, and no matter how hard we try to compensate, you're just not able to truly do as well when you're sleep deprived as when you're well rested.
Very true. Very true. And no amount of coffee or caffeine is gonna help.
No.
That's I think one of the best things I learned very early in my career was um, it's not the caffeine that's waking you up. You could have an ice cold glass of water and it would actually wake you up either equally or more so because it
Yeah,
will
there's
fill your body.
yeah, having caffeine in the first couple hours of the day actually does interfere with your energy. If you're going to have caffeine, it's better to have it, 2 to 3 hours after you have gotten up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you said that. I get a lot of looks, I'm sure you do, the minute I tell them that the first thing in their mouth should not be caffeine. It should
Right.
not be coffee, should not be soda. That should happen after breakfast, or worst case, eat it with breakfast, like full
Yes.
breakfast, not your first of the day. In my world, we actually do a couple, and most of my clients will have breakfast a couple hours later, so they're not eating on the go.
Oh, uh-huh. Right.
Mhm.
No time for breakfast in the hustle of getting everybody out the door, and don't want to be eating in the car.
Yes.
So, yeah.
or just shoving something in your mouth as you walk out the door.
Yeah, right. The interesting thing about meals, I mentioned the light, and the light is really important for the circadian system in the brain. But what helps keep our circadian system strong in our body, we think of it as the peripheral circadian system, is actually other cues, not light. And those cues are meal times, exercise, and your routine, particularly your social interactions. And, when are you reliably interacting with other people? So, for your circadian system, you want to have meals at the same start in the same half-hour window all days of the week or the month. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, or breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, however you organize your meals, and then to not just nibble or snack constantly in between meals, to have a fast. So, if you are someone who gets up and eats fairly soon, it's going to shift your body clock to be more of a morning person. If you're waiting until lunch and then eating later in the evening, that's going to shift you to be more of a night person. And we are already getting this toxic light in the evening that shifts us to be more of a night person. So I am a fan of people eating breakfast, as soon as they reasonably can after waking up. There's a lot of women who are on thyroid medications. They may be advised to take their thyroid medication first thing and then wait half an hour, depending on what they're taking before having breakfast. But yeah, having breakfast actually sooner than later, and then having a longer fasting period before bedtime. Like eating between 8 and 5 or 6, 8 a.m. and 5 or 6 in the evening is a good window. There's lots of benefits for intermittent fasting, which you give yourself an 8-hour window or a 10-hour window to eat, and the rest of the time you don't eat. I think that's a good idea for many reasons. And you just want to structure it in a way that promotes a strong circadian system and healthy sleep at night.
Absolutely. I agree with you. There's a lot of people that I've talked to about intermittent fasting. And the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is, yes, it is a marketing term now, and it's definitely a term that we use in our practices. But technically that's what we're all doing. Whether you're doing 12-hour, you're still doing an intermittent fasting protocol.
Yes.
Or, the 80s and the 90s, they used to tell us, make sure by 7 p.m. you're done eating. Well, if you're supposed to start at 8 to eat, that still gives you your intermittent fasting windows.
Yes, right. I like the shorter windows, the 10-hour. 8-hour can be hard for people. I think there are some benefits to the 8-hour eating window, which gives you 16 hours of not eating, but that can be hard for folks. And I think there's clear benefits from the 10-hour eating window, which is that like 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., which suits a lot of folks. Yeah. And then you're still having 14 hours of fasting. And it's not that you can't have water in that time too, or some, tea, some unsweetened, no additives kind of tea.
Yeah, I'm part of my background is herbal medicine, so I have a long list of various teas that I give all of my clients just so that they can take advantage of some of the flavors.
Right. Yeah. That like mouth experience of the flavors that can be, and the warm beverage and something to sip on. And I have my huge mug. This is my morning tea. It's a solid pint size. Somebody special gave that to me years ago, and I just have it every morning for my tea. It's like 2 mugs of tea in one.
I love it. I love it. I don't have a mug that size. I'm gonna have to look for one. 'Cause I
Well, and
like
also the camera makes it look a little, when it's so much closer to the screen than I am, it looks huge. But it's not actually the size of my head.
That's okay. I would be okay with one that's the size of my head just because it's um, it's there, it's convenient. I can walk by, take a sip really quick. So talk to us a little bit about, because you and I both know that if you're well hydrated, your body works effectively. And if you're not, then your body's going to stagnate. And we have a lot of people that watch this that are big on drinking coffee. And when they come to me, we have to go through a whole process of reducing that coffee intake, not the caffeine, but the coffee intake to replenish it with something that's going to help their body. How would that, how do I want to phrase this? How would having a diet that is higher in processed foods where you're drinking coffee all day versus drinking your water, drinking some teas or tisanes, how does that impact your sleep?
Yeah, so there is definitely some good information, and there's starting to be more information looking at hydration and sleep. And when people are well hydrated, they sleep better. One of the things that I think is super cool that I wish everybody knew is that in our brain, we have a lymph system that helps clear metabolic waste products. And during sleep, that lymph system opens up to about twice its size and it's most active. So there has been, we've known this for probably 20 years or maybe more, that there's a connection between poor sleep and dementia and Alzheimer's disease. In Alzheimer's disease, particularly, there's a buildup of some of these metabolic waste products, particularly a protein called beta amyloid protein. And when these beta amyloid proteins build up, they can make these plaques where it kind of aggregates, and that's part of the pathology in Alzheimer's disease. So we knew that there was this relationship before we knew about this lymphatic system. And any lymph system needs proper hydration to work, to flush those metabolic waste products out. And I think that's something to think about is your long-term brain health. You want to get enough hours of sleep. You want to have the hydration that your lymphatic system can clean your brain. Basically, sleep is time that your brain gets cleaned, and we need that, right? Because not only is there inflammation in our bodies, but there can be inflammation in the brain, and we want to clear that out if possible.
Do you have any suggestions for how people can easily transition from coffee to water? Are there any tips you have for people sticking with it?
I don't have any, I think that the flavor and the habit is um, is a real part of the process. And so if you can switch instead of delete, I think that's going to be more successful. You're in the habit of a hot, tasty drink in the morning. So what else could you have that is a hot, tasty drink? Your favorite teas. Even if it is going from coffee to a caffeinated tea, I think that's better. And then later on, a couple weeks or something, you can switch from a caffeinated tea to sometimes not having a caffeinated tea in the morning, right? So you're still getting that taste sensation. There's still those components of just the comfort of a big mug of a hot drink and just the savoring experience and giving yourself a treat. It can feel like a treat, and we all need good care and things to look forward to. I would say that people's sensitivity to caffeine generally increases as they get older. So, the amount of caffeine that may have been no problem at all when you were in your 20s or early 30s can start to be a problem when you're in your late 40s or 50s. And I have had, several people come to mind who really their sleep problem was caffeine. And as soon as they weren't having the caffeine, they had no problem. One was a man in his late mid 50s, maybe. He was a very successful businessman, and he was having 1 cup of home brewed coffee in the morning, just regular perk coffee. And then around 10:30 or 11, he'd have a coffee break at work, go to the local coffee shop and get a latte. So that in no way sounds like excessive caffeine drink, right? That's like two coffee drinks. But I said, hey, let's do this as an experiment, cut out the coffee. And actually, we only had one appointment because he cut out the coffee, and that was the problem.
Oh,
Even, he was finishing his caffeine by 11:30 noon, and it wasn't excessive to start off with, but that was enough to cause him to have difficulty falling asleep at night. So, if people are having caffeine and sleep difficulties, I would encourage you to do that kind of experiment for 10 days. And then you're in the driver's seat and you know how much the caffeine's impacting your sleep, and you can decide, yes, maybe you go meet a friend for coffee on a Saturday morning because it's a social occasion, it's a treat, it's a good part of adding to your quality of life. But then regular work days, maybe you don't have the caffeine and you prioritize your sleep on those nights. It doesn't, sometimes I think, and I do this myself, sometimes it feels like all or nothing, right? Like I got to show up 100%, or I got to stick to this health habit 100%, or not even try. But I think, showing up and working towards your goals is like, some days you're 100%, some days you're 50%, some days you're like 10%. Like, okay, instead of having a full cup of coffee, I only had half. That is a win. Like, better is better.
exactly.
Better is better. Not hold ourselves to these impossibly high, it's got to be 100% or forget it, throw in the towel.
Yes, I have to agree. It's definitely something I see a lot is people think if you don't give that 110%, the day is a wash. And
Right.
that's just not reality.
Yeah.
Things can only
Yeah.
go.
And be kind to ourselves.
Yes, that little TLC goes a long way, especially we still have to apply TLC to the things that we say to ourselves.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
So, do you have any comments or feedback for, let's say, the standard American diet, common issues that we're facing within our society, things like a stagnant lifestyle, which that leads
Yeah,
to
I
this.
do. So, when you say stagnant lifestyle, a couple things come to mind. First of all, is exercise. Movement helps sleep. Really, it's clear. And, there's some pros and cons of aerobic exercise. There's some pros and cons of weightlifting and strength training type exercise. So that's just another reason to keep um, moving. And what I do, my job is mostly a desk job, sitting and talking with people to improve their sleep and their sleep skills. But what I do in my office is I set the timer for an hour and a half, which is about the max I can really concentrate anyway, or anybody can concentrate. And then I set the timer for 30 minutes. And in that 30 minutes, I like walk the dog outside. I do a few of my stretches and exercises. I might get a meal if it's time for a meal, but I take like a full 30 minutes. And, I'm self-employed. So yes, I can do that. But just like that ratio of an hour and a half of sitting, blah, then half an hour of moving. And I try, if I'm doing housework in that time or walking the dog, I try to just be as robust as possible. And clearly, if I'm taking 20 minutes of that half hour to exercise, that can be rigorous, and it increases the blood flow to your brain, to all of your tissues, helps control your blood sugar, all of that. And then in terms of the diet, yes, there is evidence that a Mediterranean diet, which we think of as a less inflammatory diet, the anti-inflammatory diet, actually is correlated with better sleep. And one of the things I want to point out that I think is really useful for people to know is that when you are sleep deprived, which is about 36% of Americans aren't getting enough sleep in their work week. So that's a high percentage. Sleep deprivation changes your appetite hormones. It changes your the response to insulin of your cells, and it is going to promote weight gain. What happens is it changes foods we choose. We choose more processed foods, high fat, high sugar foods, less lean protein, less vegetables when we're sleep deprived. So if you're working towards slimming down or maintaining your weight, just simply getting that 7 to 9 hours that you need each and every night is going to make it easier to make healthy food choices. The other thing is that we tend to eat more. It's around 300 calories more a day that we eat when we're sleep deprived. It's like the thing to know about sleep deprivation is that your body responds to sleep deprivation like it's a stressor. And whenever you encounter a stressor, the body says, okay, we need fuel to handle this stressor, and you'll eat more food. And that's what we see with sleep deprivation. So you'll eat about 300 calories more a day, which if you eat 300 calories more a day for a year, that's about 30 pounds weight gain. And then the last thing is that it makes our cells less responsive to insulin or insulin resistant, which we see in metabolic syndrome. We see that in diabetes or pre-diabetes. So getting that sleep is going to help your body deal with the sugars in your food much better than if you are sleep deprived. So many people struggle with pre-diabetes, diabetes, weight gain, overweight. They're making healthy food choices that I think, sleep definitely can be part of the solution for you there.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because I think the fact that our body sees it as a stressor and the immediate response from our body is when we're stressed, it needs fuel,
Yeah,
especially when stress is over because you're getting chased by a tiger, you're going to get chased. Well, you use all the energy you have in your body to survive. And the very
right.
first thing that happens is now you're starving, you're famished. And it doesn't matter if it's a tiger or if you just didn't sleep well because you're stressed out about something at work. You know,
Right.
the kid kept up all night.
Yes. Yeah,
There's
I think that's really, for the problems that people are dealing with and how many people, women and men too, are, constantly fighting that extra weight or, thinking, oh my gosh, my blood sugar, I'm worried about getting diabetes, but, they don't have the sleep they need to really handle the situation well.
right, right. And to work on your sleep, you have to work on everything else. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, talk to us about where they can find you because I love all of this information and I am listening to you. And as we're going through, I'm hearing questions that some of the people I've worked with would ask. So, where would they find you? And do you have anything out on the market that they could learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah. So my business name is Skilled Sleeper. So you can find tips on TikTok and Instagram. My social website is skilledsleeper.com. And I have made some courses about sleep and I've narrowed them down for different populations because different people, depending on their lifestyle, have different sleep challenges. So there's one that is specifically for families and goes through, everything that you can expect for people of different ages and the sleep skills that you need for those different groups. There's one for women, there's one for corporate leaders, shift workers. That's about 20% of people who do some type of shift work, and they need a unique set of sleep skills. And narrowing it down allowed me to go deeper with the sleep skills that are particularly relevant for each group of folks. So that's at Skilled Sleeper. And then I have a YouTube channel. It is Skilled Sleeper, and I put out new videos weekly, and trying to get going with the tech for weekly lives. For some reason, it's not seeing my camera, but weekly lives Saturday morning on YouTube where people can ask questions.
I love that. I love that. The tech part with YouTube was a challenge at first, but it did seem like as soon as everything synced up, it's stayed that way since I started. And this podcast has been through several different phases. So good luck. I know for a fact it'll line up. They're usually pretty good about that.
Thank you. That gives me hope.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm going to put all of your information below. Thank you so much for being here. Do you have any other last minute tips that maybe we didn't talk about today?
Yes. I want to let people know the um, impact of the blue light is typically more significant than people realize. For 3 hours before bed, the recommendation is to have 10 lux of light or less and no blue light. So I'm a big, big fan of everybody having those blue blocking glasses. And I'm looking around. I don't have them here at my desk because I think they're at my bedside because I was using them last night until bed. 2 hours before bed, put on the blue blocking glasses and wear them until you are in bed with the lights out. And that will make a huge impact on your sleep. For most people, particularly people who have insomnia or some other sleep disorders, that simple practice of wearing the blue blocking glasses for 2 hours before bed is golden. And for those of you who are in families, know that children's system is much more sensitive to the blue light effects than adults are. So even more important for kids to have low light or wear the blue blockers for the hours before bed.
Do you have any suggestions for where someone could find them, or do you have a brand that you prefer?
I do have a brand, two brands actually. Viva Rays is a very good high-end product. It's kind of a lifetime pair of blue blockers. And then for a less expensive model that I like is Uvex. The most important thing is that the lenses have a very strong orangish red color to them that has been shown to be optimal for blocking the blue rays.
I had not heard that. Okay. I'm glad I asked that because majority of the blue blockers I have found have their clear lenses.
Yes, that's not evidence-based.
Okay. That is good to know. Orange, red lenses. Very
Yeah,
nice.
right.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And anybody out there, I will have all of Dr. Darley's information down below. So connect with her, chat with her, ask questions. If you have any issues you want to talk to me about, by all means. But information will be below. And that ends another episode. Thank you so much for being here. Cheers.